Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly is interviewing Conrad Heerfer of Cresco, the project finance advisory company that is dedicated to helping a capital project become a reality. Hi Conrad, it's great to chat to you. I'd like to kick off this interview by putting this question to you. How does Cresco help a project idea become an up and running project?
Thank you, Martin. That is the crux of what we do out there, and there's a long history to that. It's really from our founding day, or our previous life ultimately, in terms of being part of the lending space, where we realized there's quite a gap to bridge to get these projects funded, and that's where we started the business, is basically to assist project promoters to get to a fundable project and putting the hard yards in to actually achieve that with the other disciplines involved, like technical and legal. So we start as early as possible and formulate a strategy, a funding strategy towards getting this project funded, and then identifying the gaps in terms of what needs to be addressed on those projects during the preparation stages and towards achieving financial close on the projects. So we've applied that discipline across all industry sectors and in most jurisdictions in sub-Sahara Africa over the last 20 years of existence. But it's really the learnings from our previous lives, being part of the lender teams, being part of the investment houses that we brought to this advisory space we live in.
And what about the areas that you cover? What about infrastructure at the moment? What about energy was big, and mining in the past probably?
Yes, we tend to still refer to ourselves being sector agnostic, but the bulk of what we're currently doing is energy, of course, with the market we're facing, not only in South Africa, but across Africa as such, or globally actually. The energy transition side, and what is quite topical at the moment is, of course, the infrastructure space. Especially transport infrastructure, rail, ports, and so forth, that we are assisting to get to what we call a private sector participation space, or a PPP space, because you're mainly dealing with public infrastructure as such, and you need to partner with private sector and mobilize private capital towards that space. So exactly what I explained earlier around the assistance we give the project promoters, we are also actively involved in the public sector space, preparing them for the investment that they need from the private sector space.
And what good examples can you give us of sort of tireless and determined idea to business project successes?
Well, there's over 20 years, there's been a number. It started off in the heydays of Cresco when there was still a booming mining space, especially for South African contractors in Africa, where we were involved in supporting South African banks and contractors towards implementing probably some of the most successful mining projects across Africa. And then, in terms of what we're currently dealing with on the energy side, we actively involved in various projects, not only on the generation side, but also on the energy user side. Probably most of what we're doing at the moment is supporting the intensive energy users in procuring alternative energy. I'm talking about the big mining houses, some of the big energy users, the likes of Anglo American, Sasol, and also specialist users like data centers in alternative energy procurement. And you've probably noticed, and I'm sure you guys have reported on that extensively, of the number of private PPA or power purchase projects that's been closed recently. I'm proud to say that Cresco has been involved on both sides of that table, depending on the project, for a number of years now. And as far as infrastructure is going, we are actively assisting as part of a multidisciplinary transaction advisory team, some of the public sector entities in procuring the private investment and assisting them in preparing for that process of procuring partners in that space. Example would be a number of the PSP projects that Transnet's involved in, that we are preparing both at a port and in the gas space as well, gas infrastructure space. In the early days of the renewable energy procurement program, the earlier rounds, we had a number of clients of ours that we advised on, or projects we advised in, which achieved financial close, and equally so cross-border. We've been involved in various projects, not only mining, but various independent power producer projects that's been closed cross-border, different technologies, not all renewable, where we've been involved with some of the major projects that's been implemented in Africa around energy, infrastructure and mining. We do also, as I said, there's still the view that we're sector agnostic. It's not the only sectors we're involved in. We've got a strong track record in healthcare, private healthcare. Over the years, I think a number of the private licensed hospitals that was implemented in South Africa, we acted as the financial advisor or project finance advisor on, and even agriculture. We've done various projects, strategic projects in the agricultural value chain in terms of implementation of infrastructure, and then of course real estate, heavily involved in student housing, mass real estate projects, commercial real estate. So we've covered it all, and we've got various successes there that we're proud to be part of as it is today, and of course the future is where the focus will be going forward.
And give us a bit more insight into Cresco itself. Who owns Cresco? How did it come about, and what is its own ambition for growth?
Well, Cresco, as I said, started off with some of the founding members moving out of the corporate space and forming this advisory. There's still 3 of our founding members that's involved, including myself. I was the first party that had to step out of the corporate comfort zone 20 years back to form Cresco on that basis and start the ball rolling. As it is today, we majority owned by the full-time members of the management team of Cresco. We have a corporate strategic partner that's part of the business, and we are actually in the market at the moment to find a corporate strategic partner that is actually with a global reach that would add to Cresco's growth aspirations in terms of driving a more global sort of footprint towards the market we service ultimately.
Very interesting. And so why does Cresco say we are more than just advisors?
Well, I mean, it could be viewed as a marketing jargon on that basis, but the reality is Cresco is known in the market to get our hands dirty. We often, I mean, a lot of the work we do in the private sector, as an example, gets referred to us by stakeholders like banks, investment houses, industry partners that do appreciate what effort Cresco puts in and the Cresco team does to create value on those projects. So we get involved as early as concept stage to assist and with formulating a strategy to drive this project up the value curve. Sometimes some of the best advice we can give our clients at that early stage is, listen, there's a fatal flaw with this project. Don't spend your time and money on this. Rather pursue something that's got a better chance of success. But once the project has a well-defined strategy towards the investment needed to implement the project, we support the process through not only our core service, but some of our complementary services in the form of project management office, in terms of specialized technical support to manage certain technical work streams towards the outcomes needed and covering the gaps to get the project to a bankable or fundable state. And then, of course, at that stage, there's a well-formulated funding strategy and targets, funding targets identified that we then chase through quite an efficient process towards financial close. We do also provide a lot of post-financial close support during the construction phase, during the operational stage. You would appreciate our discipline. The core tool we use is cash flow modeling or financial modeling. So we use that discipline to analyze the projected and actual or projected cash flows against the actual cash flows achieved on that basis. So we apply that same discipline during the later stages of a project to evaluate performance in terms of implementation and then onto operational. And if there's any problems that the project might encounter, we're in a very good position to analyze where things are going wrong and to assist the client to steer the project in the correct direction. Of course, with our core discipline being the project finance advisory side, we also play an active role in refinancing and also a portfolio level sort of refinancing that we do during the operational stage. Once a client's got a portfolio of projects, if you look at the energy side, we often get called up to assist during that more advanced stage of capital raise on that basis. But yeah, we put the hard yards in. We like to feel that we're not an external advisor. We provide in-source owners capacity to support our clients towards a successful outcome.
And finally, Conrad, what is the big takeaway?
Well, I think the market we live in at the moment, there's a lot of investment needed. The reality is that the development needed, especially around some of the infrastructure, some of the energy needs out there, unfortunately, it requires some heavy private sector investment in it. And unfortunately, that would require the project to be in a fundable state. We believe there's going to be, we saw it over the last number of years. We traditionally worked only in the private sector space, but we've been pulled into the public sector space for that main reason, to assist public sector to get to a fair risk sharing arrangement with private sector to enable the capital to be mobilized towards the investments needed in the public sector space. And that is more critical than ever. I think we all know what is happening in South Africa in terms of the deficit in investment that's needed at the public sector level, even more so in Africa. If the problem is extreme in South Africa, it's multiples of that in Africa. And at a global economy, there's the whole shift in what's happening at the moment around the traditional way of addressing these deficits out there. And it will point towards more a private sector focused investment program that's needed. And for that reason, you need the right advisors on board to ultimately assist or give the project the best chance possible to succeed in achieving financial close.
That was Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly, speaking to Conrad Heerfer of Cresco, the project finance advisory company that turns ideas into performance.